Aloha mai kako. Aloha. Mahalo, mahalo. We're going to bring up Kumu Hokulani Ho to help us begin this evening and welcome us into this space. We also, wait, where did he? Oh, let's say we also like to give a shout out and aloha and mahalo to Chancellor slash, I'm going, yeah, VPP of the whole system, the boss man himself, Mr. Louis Hokuano. Mahalo, Louis. But yeah.
This melee will bring you into this space and the surrounding areas as your voices have and will travel throughout this evening. Mapu mai ke ala o ka leo hea hea la e tu hea hea. Te pai pu e o ne o ka ihuwa a. Nā ka aha aha I hali kau kini ki ani mai ka leo pu hele. Hele mai, haele mai, e komo I ka malu o ka nei e hele mai. Haele mai I pu ia nei wauna hele I ke ala e. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e, aloha.
Aloha nui. Thank you, Auntie Hoku, for opening our gathering. And aloha too. Now I know ihuva'a. Aloha. Aloha no. Welcome, community members. Thank you for allowing us to be on your beautiful island. My name is Mahina Poi Poi Paishan, and I'm here to help support our gathering and the conversation today regarding Mauna Kea. So quickly, I'm just going to ask all the members that make up the Kuoa Kea team to be acknowledged, to throw a shaka, raise your hand, aloha. If you're part of the Kuoa Kea consultant team, say aloha. Aloha. We make up a number of companies, and you're gonna see those logos shortly. Thanks, Uncle Paul. And we're here to support the efforts being led by Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority. Mauna Kea Stewardship Oversight Authority is a governance board, and we're going to pull up the next slide, that are made up by members throughout our Pai'aina. I'm going to ask those members who are with us today to stand and be recognized. We have Chair Komeiji. Dr. Noinoi Wong Wilson sends her love and her regards. She was intending to be here, had a family situation which did not permit her to travel. So we sent our aloha. Hopefully she's watching online. We have Rich Matsuda, Vice Chair. And we have Mr. Neil Hannes. Going on to the next slide, we're also going to recognize and acknowledge our staff members. Leading our staff is Mr. John DeFries, Executive Director. Mr. Bill Stormont, managing all operations, many teams that are caring for Mauna Kea. And we have Lloyd Unibasami, thank you, who's administrator, also support, administrative support. And now I'm going to ask Chair Komeiji if he could please share a couple words.
Mahalo. Aloha. I wanted to first thank all of you for spending your valuable time coming and sharing your manao with us. The purpose of tonight and all of the meetings that we're having this week and next week is to actually hear from the community. We're going to do this really short introduction about who we are, but we actually have a very robust discussion that each of you hopefully will participate. And the purpose of that is for us to hear what your thoughts are, rather than us telling you what our thoughts are. So I'd ask that you share respectfully, share what you really believe, because it's only when we understand what you truly feel that will help us, guide us as we continue on our journey. The other thing I would ask you to do, in addition to sharing, is to listen to others. Part of what we're trying to do as part of our process is to provide a space where people can have discussions, people can share their thoughts, but it only makes sense if you share your thoughts, if others listen to your thoughts. You don't necessarily have to agree, but please open your mind and just listen to what others have to say. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich Matsuda, that's going to tell you how we came into existence and what the purpose of MKSOA is. So thank you.
Aloha. So my job is to tell you kind of how we got here, and then Neil Hanna's will tell you where we're at and where we're going from here. So keep it kind of short, but I want to just take us back to the 2019-2020 time frame, when there was a huge outpouring from the community on Mauna Kea. Perhaps many of you were there at that time. And what was happening then was the community was using their voice to tell everyone what is most important. And so while we're here tonight, it's not the beginning. The voices have been put out there for quite some time. So this is a continuation and an evolution of that. In 2021, so the pandemic came about in the spring of 2020. And following that, the legislature put together a working group. The working group was to respond to the fact that what was found was that the Native Hawaiian community voices and point of view, perspectives were not being included in the process of governance on Mauna Kea. So the legislature, in their wisdom, created a working group that ran through 2021. There's actually 2 members of the working group from Maui that are here tonight, Brailyn Onadera and Louis Hokoana, who participated in that working group. And then there were 4 members of that working group that eventually ended up onto to the authority itself when it got formed. So that is Noenoe Wong Wilson, who is the first vice chair, Lanakila Manguil, Chancellor Bonnie Irwin from UH Hilo, and then myself. So we were part of that group that tried to envision a community-based model of astronomy, or model of governance, including all the different perspectives. And as I'm here in Maui, so thankful that you have welcomed us in to talk to you. I was thinking about how the importance of community voice in response to community needs is so important, and seeing Archie here and the other leaders who responded to things that happened here in Maui, showing how community priorities, community voice, and what's important is so important to be part of the process. So the authority was formed, and something that's really different in the working group was to make sure that Hawaiian values were at the base of whatever we do. So in that working group, and then put into the law, were these values and guiding principles of Mauna, Aloha, Opu, Kupuna, and Holomua, Oikela, Kela. And that becomes a basis, and then later on the Kanawai were added into our framework. So one message is that is very much part of the foundation of the working group. So in 2022, the legislature passed a law to create the authority. In 2023, the members that Mahina introduced were confirmed by the legislature, appointed, confirmed to be put on, and then we're given a 5-year period of transition from the current governance system to eventually the authority will take over to provide stewardship for Mauna Kea, with very much, like you could tell already, a different feeling and basis to how it'll be run. So I'm going to hand it over to Neil, and he's going to tell you where we're at and kind of where we're going.
Thank you, Rich.
Ooh, aloha. I miss you guys. I was 8 years on the Water Commission. I was here for so many times to talk about East Maui, to talk about Nawaiha, to talk about Lahaina, and created a pelina with you folks, and I just miss seeing you. So day I got off the Water Commission, I got onto this authority, so it's had me on Moko Keawe a lot, but I'm glad that part of our process is to recognize that Mauna Kea is of statewide interest, and so we're having these meetings across the Pai'aina. And also, what we do on Mauna Kea could have implications for how we look at Aina more broadly. And so we should be talking across the state and to stakeholders on a broad basis. So Rich has introduced how we came into existence, and a very important part of that is that we're not starting this conversation tonight. This conversation has been going for a while, and it was codified and kind of collected with the working group report. It was codified and collected with the act that created this body. And no sense have conversation if you're not going to listen to the last one. Why be here tonight if tomorrow we're going to have a new conversation? So what you're here to do tonight is really to build on those conversations. And your voice may already be in that other earlier record. So as we look at what the legislature did, it says, okay, make this happen. We look at what does this act really say? And one of the important principles of the act is it makes the Mauna a stakeholder, not a parcel. This is not just anything that, okay, we're going to have our interests and this is where it lands. No, this Mauna has significance of itself, and our job is to kind of figure that out, and then to regulate human behavior to align with the Mauna's interests. So that's one principle. Secondly, he said, we're not going to govern this process using the same old system, same old body. We need a new body that's more broadly representative. And when you look at the composition of the authority that we have, you see sectors and departments represented, but you also see lineal descendants represented, cultural descendants represented, people with Moko Keawe land management represented, and astronomy represented. So the stakeholders are kind of on the body that's going to govern and has an interest in the Mauna. The third thing is they gave us resources to stand up a whole new state department in 5 years. Not a small task, but one that we say, okay, let's go for it. So our job is to implement what the legislature wanted. And it begins kind of with a sense of you got to build a team, and you see members of the team. You got to build some systems, but most importantly, you have to have a sale plan. Archie, we know this from all your work and all our work at PVS, that if you don't know where you're going, if you haven't set that, and I hope we're getting to the plan, we said we got to have a sense of vision. What's our destination? We got to see the island, and then that'll help us to understand how we need to regulate behavior. All the behavior that's in a astronomy industry, education, cultural resource management, natural resource management, commercial activity, all of that recreation then becomes, we can regulate it because you have the guidance of the strategy and that sense of vision. So you're here tonight really to help us understand that and to kind of create that body of work that's that aspirational statement that really kind of reflects the island that we see, that we hold out on the horizon, that we're going to try and get to. And probably won't get there overnight, not in a day, not in a year, but directionally it has to be solid, and we have to be consistent in how we get there. You ma'a to planning process. It is both product and it is process. And so part of our process is to really engage community and to be out here having these discussions. And this discussion is not just here in this room, but it's on the record, it's preserved for the record, and it's also on YouTube. And so there may be many other people watching as we speak tonight on YouTube. So we want to reach out broadly. Secondly, we want to gather that information in and be really transparent about how we treat it. That if you have mana'o, it's going to be written down, it's going to be recorded. And people are going to have differing points of view, and our job is not to please everybody necessarily, but to be really transparent about our logic in how we shape the plan that we end up adopting. And then finally, we got to be consistent. We all know the story about, if you're going to write into a lease agreement, you got to decommission a telescope, then you don't want to get to the end and see that telescope still there. You got to be consistent in enforcing the actions that you designate as important. So that's the framework we're creating, a strategic framework, and then a regulatory plan. You know, we're in the early stages of this. We hope you will help us address some of the issues of the aspirational statement. The legislature told us, create an aspirational statement that solves long-standing social justice issues, cultural issues, and so forth. That's going to be informed by you tonight. And then secondly, we get to how we actually bring those values into play. And to cap that discussion, you know, it's one thing to be values-driven. We know that requires laws or rules and so forth, and we have kanawai. And that was expressed in the working group report and in the act. And so we're going to off this discussion, then before we turn it over to you, with a share video by Etipu Kanehele about kanawai, and help kind of give us some understanding of it, and some that's maybe new. And so let's hear from Etipu.
You know, it's a real honor to talk about Maui because it's not something we hear about all the time, but it's something that existed for a long time, and it's something that continues to exist because it has to do with this land that we live on, and what we as Hawaiians anyway should know about this land that we live on. That's what the kanawais are all about. Kanawai is first and foremost, it's called a law, but it's like a code or a decree or a regulation. Any one of those will identify the idea of kanawai. And the first kanawai that we're going to talk about is a kanawai called Ho'okiki kanawai. Ho'okiki kanawai. Okay, and Ho'okiki kanawai is the law of continuum. And so this is about Kanakas, trying to educate Kanakas about what's happening on their land and how they can make their land exist for many generations. So this kanawai has to do with the law of continuum. And Ho'okiki kanawai is, the idea of Ho'okiki is to let things flow. And if you look around you, what are the things that flows? And one of the things that flow on our land is water. And they focus on water a lot because water is one of our main sources of life, for life. And so the idea of Ho'okiki kanawai is the idea of allowing or being aware of where water flows. And the other thing that flows is magma. And the great thing about magma and lava is once it comes up, whoosh, 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 and then it flows, it comes up out of the ground, and then it flows down to the ocean, but it gives us land. And we look at it sometimes as being destructive. It is not destructive. It does what it has to do in order for us to have land. And so, what the Ho'okiki kanawai is stay out of its way. Okay, allow. And then the idea of water, you know, Mauna Kea, the aupua of Ka'ohe runs from Hamakua, it's a small aupua, runs from Hamakua to the top of Mauna Kea and over to Mauna Loa. Ka'ohe is bamboo. And the idea of the bamboo and why it's called bamboo, it has to do with water. And between the two mountains catches the most water. And it catches the most water, and this water will go into the earth, go into a bamboo idea of water basins. And then the water will leak out from it very slowly. And so you have all of these water basins between the two mountains. And that's why we have really big rivers in the Hamakua district, because of all the water that flows down freely. So the consciousness of what flows, where it flows, why we should be conscious of it flows, because it gives us life and because it gives us a place to live. And water is what we need for life. And a lot of the water has to do with the two mountains that we live on. That's the idea of the continuum. The other kanawai is kua'a kanawai. Kua'a is the burning back, the law of the burning back. Now, the law of the burning back has to do with the gestating of landscape, basically, gestating of landscape. You know, they initially looked at it as, or compared it to an ali'i of very, very high rank. You don't approach the ali'i of very high rank because he is out of reach of everybody. It's the same thing with these land areas, the landscape that we need to hold sacred, or we need to hold like they're going to do a lot of good for us, because these are the land areas that are necessary for our existence. One is, of course, the volcano, and is one of it. The other is places that have marshes and streams and rivers and coral heads and the idea of the wet forest, because all of these things help to reproduce what's in there on the land. Coral head lets things out into the ocean, and a lot of fish go for it. Okay. And the wet forest is what gives life to more forests. Okay. And the streams do the same thing. And so this is the idea of the law of the burning back. So you look for these places and you be sure that you allow these places to maintain itself as it is. The other kanawai is Kaiokia kanawai. Kaiokia kanawai is the law of natural boundaries. Now this is a law that we as Kanakas need to be aware of. Okay. The law of natural bodies is the law where all of these things that I just talked about, the volcano, the movement of water, and all of that, where they are moving. And what it's saying is that you have to recognize the boundary. So this is what this is saying. Know the boundaries. Know your boundary as a Kanaka, and know the boundaries of the land. So Kanawai is all about the environment, all about the land, and what the land is doing, and where the land is, and how the land provides for us. And therefore, our idea of being conscious of it and staying away from places that is not good for us. Okay, the last Kanawai is Ki Hoi Hoi Kanawai. And Ki Hoi Hoi Kanawai is the law of regeneration. And so the law of regeneration is that it's like the first law is the law of continuum. We need to continue our own generation of Kanakas. And we need to see that the generation of the native trees continue. We need to see that the generation of the native birds continue, or the generations of the insects that live in these areas continue, because they're the food for the birds. And so we have to be conscious of all of that as natives of the island. And again, these are the 4 laws of the land. And the law of regeneration is that we go out and there is a sense of reciprocation. And the sense of reciprocation is, if you go back to the Kumulipo in the first 2 lines, I was going to say this with the first Kanawai, but I didn't. But with this particular line, the first 2 lines of the Kumulipo, O Keawi Kahuli Vela Kahonua. And when you talk about that, people say, oh, that's when our earth is hot. No, it's talking about the lava. When the lava is hot, it makes our earth hot. O Keawi Kahuli Lole Kalani. And what that does when our earth gets hot like that, and a lot of steam is coming up, it clouds the sky. Okeao I kukayaka kala, it hides the sun. So what it's doing is it's returning water to the space above and turning it into clouds. And eventually, what that does is that cloud system will return the water back to us. So the whole idea of kiho'iho'i kanabai is the idea of reciprocation, that we give and the land, and so be conscious of the fact that the land does give back.
Okay, so now we're teed up to have conversation in 3 groups. I'm going to invite my fellow facilitators and recorders to join me up front here. And then I think we have a perfect group to have like really intimate, productive conversations. So again, this part, we're really trying to maximize, this 2-hour gathering for you to provide input. And why, again, you heard it from many of our speakers, but again, it's to not only share your mana'o about the future of Mauna Kea, but it's also for you to help shape priorities, which include 3 topical areas this evening. It's access and use, it's around the application of kanawai in the governance of Mauna Kea, and then finally around an aspirational statement. And so you have on your name tags either a red dot, a green dot, or a blue dot. I also want to let you know it's going to be super helpful if you bring this with you, yeah? And the reason why is because we've tried to create a pamphlet around those 3 topical areas so that anytime you want to reference, we also have our draft strategic framework. Anytime you want to reference, look at the background information for the 4 questions that you guys are going to dive into tonight, you can take a look at this. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to ask that the red group, you are going to, if you have a red dot on your name tag, you can leave your items here because we're going to, if you want to leave it here, you can. If you want to bring it with you, go ahead and make sure you have this card. Can you flip it, please, Puel? This card with you. Bring that card with you. You're going to join Puel and Heather. Okay, you can follow them, and they're going to go to the back of the room. Mahalo. Okay, next up is our green group. Our green group, and this is led by Kioni Kuoha, recorded by Janice. Mahalo. If you have a green dot, you're going to be on this side of the room, in the back. And then finally, blue group, you're right here with Mehano Kala and Jenna. Members, please, community members, please enjoy the ono chicken heka. I heard it's very ono. I haven't had it yet, but I heard it's delish. So please gather, take your me'ai with you, and have good conversation while your opu are filled. Mahalo. And we're going to get going. We have an hour, and then we'll see you back for Q&A. Mahalo nui.
We're gonna do all the questions that they were talking about. I love us how none of us nobody's already just sit in the front row. Yeah.
Take the easy and put it in the back row.
So I used to teach college and I taught at the university. I did that every time. Oh, yeah, just sit in the back. Okay, everybody, turn your chairs around. That's the front of the classroom. Yeah. Yeah, keep them on it. Yeah. 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 So the first thing we're gonna do, is your cards that you have. And sorry, let me explain this. This is feeding into the YouTube. Yeah. So there's no speaker icebreaker as the moment you guys can talk story with each other. And then at the end, we're going to collect those. Right? And at the end of the whole community engagement process, we're going to create an art piece out of all your folks' thoughts and ideas on the answer of the question. And before you leave, because they're so nunny, they're so beautiful, these cards, right? We're actually gonna, you'll be able to take a whole set home. There's a bunch of the cards. You can take them home. Um, yeah, and use the key or put them up at your office for some inspiration. But yeah, so you can take that time, just, look at somebody next to you and just start to, and you guys are odd numbers, so just have a conversation for a couple of minutes about your answer to that question. Yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll take about 4 minutes for this. You guys acting so shy. Talk to each other. Talk to each other. Introduce yourselves.
So you guys maybe can be a way of three, and then you two maybe insert each other.
Oh yeah, are you
Just
guys?
your name, where you're
Do you
from,
guys know
and
each
your
other
response
Yeah.
to the card.
already?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We should split you guys.
Okay,
Go meet
No,
some, yeah.
because I'm assisting with a little bit of a language. English is not her first language.
Oh, okay.
Nor is Olelo Hawaii, so she gets extra points for being in like a third language.
Oh, there you go.
So Katsari agree with Flores for not consent. This should be how you feel about
What's your name? Jean. Jean?
Yeah, sure.
Ah, Jean. 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 You teach here at the university? You teach here? Oh, okay. You're the what?
With the observatory.
Oh, the one here.
No,
Oh, yeah. Oh, you just flew in.
Yeah.
You flew in for this.
Oh, mahalo for coming.
Ah.
That's our community.
Yes. Oh, what was your which question you guys got this time?
Relationship.
Relationship. Do you know what that?
Well, now, yeah, but like all of us, we all come from Hawaii. My father's side,
You went there, Ohana too. Who's that?
well, I mean, we should like back to that days.
gonna wrap up. Yeah. So just,
I would say this. My question is this: what kuleana the astronomers have to know?
You guys are talking. She can get a new
Hey,
card when she goes.
Conquer.
She understands the question a little
I
bit
got
more
big
clearly
fans
now.
for Conquer. He told me Hawaiians gave Mauna Kea to the world. That's Conquer. He told me that.
can I collect your card?
He told me Hawaiians gave Mauna Kea to the world.
I'm not going to be able to read it if you take it, but that's okay. I can summarize.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, we're not gonna read that.
Every face of that mountain, from the top to the bottom. Just get a new one in Bombay. Give it to her.
Where's the evidence of that? But you see, there's racism. Oh my! He told me this. He told me, but in fact, his whole thing was, yeah, Hawaiians gave Mauna Kea to the world. And I asked him, well, he told me. So I said, he asked as if he speaks for the world. He asked as if he speaks for the world. I said, you're a foreigner in our land. You don't speak for the world. He's a foreigner in our land. He doesn't respect us. Trying a long kind of history.
Issues that come with all of it. I know it's very complicated and complex. I guess maybe the one land use I know the least.
Yeah, I just have a long, I know a long kind of thing.
I know the bad part about it.
I'm with you.
I acknowledge that there are some benefits of it, but I wonder if they really outweigh the costs. I feel like that's true for a lot of people, and the nature of it is kind of shrouded in a little bit
I
of
love your shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
I wanted your shirt, by the way. I was like, where do I get that one?
Girl, I don't know. It's a
Oh, Lahaina Luna. Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know. You have to ask Ava. I'll find out.
Did Ha'alilio go to Lahaina Luna too? Oh. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, good. Now that you guys got all acclimated to each other, we're going to start to answer the questions. We're going to start with the access and use question, right? And so I'm going to pass the mic around to you folks. If you can speak into the mic for this so that our people on YouTube can be a part of the discussion if they couldn't make it here tonight. But also, just so that we can get it moving around to everybody, we'll pass the mic. So the question is, what are some examples of social, safety, and conservation impacts of recreational use that should be monitored?
Is this just the summit we're talking about?
So it's just, MKSOA, and Uncle Neil, maybe you can kind of talk about a little bit the purview that you guys have, there's a diagram inside there too. Yeah, so from the, so Hale Pohaku, and then the road going up and around. Yeah. Does anybody like to start us off with some of the activities that should be monitored? In Mana'o? You look like you have a thought just bursting.
That's just my natural resting face. No. There, like I said, Mauna Kea is a big mountain, and there's lots of issues, but limited to the above 9,000 foot. I know the one that I struggle with the most ethically, and I'm probably not going to be popular for saying this, but when there's snow on that mountain, you have everybody come out. And there are people that can be respectful in that space, and there's people that are not, that are entitled to see it as a playground. And that's always kind of bothered me. I understand it's exciting and it's fun, and I'm not opposed to people coming and engaging and exploring and doing it, but I've been up there and seen all the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's one of the negative sides of having easy access that's facilitated by the activities that's on the summit that bring a type of behavior that wouldn't otherwise probably be possible. And it's just what it is. I say that solution, really, not off the bat, but let's hope one is one that I hope maybe we could develop.
Sure, we'll just go around the circle here. I'll be real quick. And I'm just thinking kind of zoom my challenge just with the question is the term recreational use. And, you know, when we look at sacred spaces, kapu spaces, what the term recreation to me naturally goes towards like a national park, which, you know, opens up to all different kinds of issues. So, you know, I'll just pause there.
I think for me, it's just kind of the unchecked nature of a lot of stuff, right? Like, you don't know how to drive up and down one steep hill, but you just go, right? So people burn their brakes, get into problems, or you can kind of okay hiker, yeah, can, right? And then you get into trouble, right? So kind of like number one, check for you really know what you're doing, right? Yeah, yeah. Like, you sure? Yeah.
I think that as well. And thinking about the snow activity, I know when you check in at the national park. So my question is, what role maybe the national park is going to continue to play in the oversight of recreational access? Okay, because I know they ask you to stop, acclimate. I don't know. The check is, how dizzy do you feel usually, and then you go, you know, go up to Vayu and you're like, oh, now I feel dizzy. Now I know what dizzy is. But I just wonder if there's a way to not say don't go, because we want people to experience Poliahu and all the seasons and all the majesty of that environment. But I don't know, maybe there's a time element where you sort of have to check yourself. And if you know, okay, I'm going to have to go, I'm going to have to listen, I'm going to have to check in with somebody, fill out some questionnaire about how I feel, and maybe that gives people pause to see if everybody in the group is up to that. I don't know. It is a you want to experience, but you don't want to get in trouble, put it on somebody else to save you, and also be all Yahoo. So.
Actually, I have tons of issues that I don't know, for whatever, they're not all in here. Like I said, most of the reasons why I was out there had nothing to do with most of the stuff here. So things like title, there's no mention of title, no mention of the history of the place, no mention of the sacred. None of that is mentioned here. We can start with Kanawai, and I would start off and say, yeah, but the first question I'm going to say, we look in recreation, how come we're not even talking about the astronomy and their presence and the observatories on the mountain? How come, we're not here, I'm not here because of that. That's snow stuff. That's like number 20 on the list to me. And so I'm concerned, actually. Not just curious, I'm concerned that we're not even talking about the real issues. And so my first question is that we should be talking about astronomy as use of the mountains, the abuse. How come we talk about Kaiokia, Kanawai Kaiokia, and we get industrial, corporate, foreign entities on our mountain? I thought we were talking Kanawai, Kaiokia. What? We get the tallest building on Haleakala right here that you cannot even build in Wailuku. But that's an industrial building controlled by the U.S. military up there in their research. And so my point is, how come we're not even discussing stuff yet? And I think that's an important piece, because that was the main piece why we was up there. And I go at an old meeting, and he said, and you might even mean that, and he said, we gave Mauna Kea to the whole world. And I asked him, so you speak for the world, first of all. And I asked him, the hell gave you the mountain? But my point is, that is the same security. That's the reason we're dealing with this stuff here. And that's why for me, like I said, I get issues about the snow and all that, I write on, but I'm here to talk about why is why we have this industrial. We haven't even answered that question first. And then secondly, going back to other issues later on, I don't know if we're going to talk about things like title. We don't mention nothing. These guys just assume. Again, it's this assumption. Where they get the, let me ask you, what gave astronomy the right to be there in the first place? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that history. Why isn't that there? Why are we not talking about, who was the university? When we use the word stewards, I'm not a freaking steward. I'm not a freaking steward.
That information is...
I find that offensive, stewardship. Because show me the word steward in our language. Go show me. That's an howly mentality. You see, they're already making us play this howly game, and that's why for me, it's like, I'm looking at this going, I'm concerned. Because I know we're going to end up beefing again. We're not solving anything. And so anyway, so when I look at recreation, my first question, I look at astronomy as recreation for the wealthy, military, industrial, entities that are out there that are playing in our lands and stuff. And so when we talk about why we was involved, none of this stuff to me had anything to do with us.
I'm sorry, I don't think I have anything useful to add after what we've just heard on this particular question. So.
Sorry for being very, but I put myself on the line with this stuff.
Oh yeah, no. And we have a whole question and time set aside for the kanawai, which all the things that you're saying, yeah.
But people like Gunter can say,
Yeah.
see, they gotta know this stuff.
Yeah.
What did Mike Mayberry say?
You gotta put a class together.
No, my point is that's the kind of stuff we should get so people know.
Right, right.
Yeah. Somebody been booking us all this time, lying to us and stuff. Let's tell the truth about everything. Anyway, that's what I'm trying to say. I think that needs to be well stated.
Part of the history.
Because none of that is here. Just pretending like we're just friends and we're going up and we're going to find a way to go build the snow.
Yeah. That's some of the help and the direction that the MKSOA board is dealing with, some of the details of how it is that they put together their management plan. You're right, there's a whole bunch of other things too that some of it we'll get to in here. Some of it definitely is in the educational materials and the history of the space and the place from the time of the state going to the university and then transferring it over and then into the future too. So a lot of that is in there. Not everybody has your experience though. So yeah, look forward to that syllabus of your class that you can create. Yeah. Yeah, he did. That's right. I was like, that was good. Yeah. Right.
Nothing to do with Hawaii. We never gave any consent to that.
So you,
The title of that stuff is still an issue.
so your concern is going to be just astronomy, so not the university or the state.
Because that's what we get for. I mean, D&D, that's astronomy.
Yeah.
That's where it started.
All right. You have any more things?
Solar telescope.
What?
That's
Yeah, because I think kind of what I'm hearing him say, he's articulating a much better than I was able to when I got the mic. But the behaviors that are allowed now, or that are people even have the ability to do now, are kind of like I don't know what's the word, unintended consequence, a side effect, an unfortunate side effect of just having all of that activity up there. And it's not just so much that it's not that it wouldn't be acceptable, but it is made possible by the presence of this type of commercial and industrial, or whatever you want to call it, type of behavior or activity. And that's where I was trying to it opens a door for all kinds of other stuff, including people that go to Lake Waiau in inappropriate ways and all kinds of things. I mean, especially with social media influencers nowadays, you can find evidence of all kinds of nonsense that happen in these types of places, and there's no accountability. We could totally dig at the question of who even allowed it to begin with, but also dealing with the present reality that there's no management of all these unintended things.
Mahalo. Anybody else? any of them you guys want to jump in or anything?
These topics have priorities. You might want to flip through to talk about so they see the questions.
Oh, okay.
The areas of discussion tonight. Because
Can I run through the access? I forgot to answer.
the aspirational statement, which it says identify the social justice issues.
Right.
I don't know if the comments kind of fit there, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
How about we just run through all the questions first, like 2, 3, and 4, and then we can come back.
Sure. So the second question, just for you guys, is how might the authority provide guidance to ensure that individuals have the information to conduct themselves in an appropriate and pono way on Mauna Kea? So it's access issues. This one is, after learning about Kanawai and examples of how they guide stewardship and ecosystem management, what are some examples of places or times on Mauna Kea or elsewhere where Kanawai are at work? And then, what are some of the social justice issues that are still unresolved and underpin the conservation? That's it.
Well, I forget to answer that first one, the access question. It popped in my head, I forget to ask. When I hear the word access, the first question I ask is, what is the access up to the top of Mauna Kea? We know it's from the Mauna Kea. It's from the road. There's questions on the title
The road.
of that road. And so we talk access, recreational use. How does guys even get access to that road in the first place?
Yeah.
And that should be in the report. We should know exactly what is the title report. Because I know they don't have access to it. They don't have title.
Right.
They try to bullshit about being settled and employed people. You know that. You can read the actual letter. You can see for yourself. Hawaii Homes, who say they don't have title to it. So when you talk access, that's the first thing. And I think Hawaiian Homes, and I would say Hawaiian Homes should be reclaiming that, make sure control that access. Because we as beneficiaries have a right to determine what Hawaiian Homes does.
Right.
The Hawaiian Homes, the board itself cannot make the decision without talking to beneficiaries and all that. So when we talk access, Mauna Kea access will come first.
And title. Okay. I think the time is the kind, yeah?
Yeah.
And go to the next
We
one.
can hold more.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else on access right now? You guys saw the other questions, so get some more, right?
Well, I would just say that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, it just brings up to mind how important it is that that information is transparent, because without having the group who so much time on the Mauna and involved in these very questions, I feel like, gosh, I should know that. Who's treading and just in the act of going on the road. Yeah, it makes me feel like kind of stupid and like that. That's my kuleana to know that.
And so for this one, how might the authority provide guidance to ensure that individuals have the information to conduct themselves in an appropriate and pono way on Mauna Kea? Is this working out for you guys? You guys like passing the mic? What? It means you always wait first. Yeah. But you can always come back around the other way. Oh, we go this way, we go this way, we go this way, opposite way. Yeah, yeah. If you have a thought. If not, you can pass the mic over.
I'm not sure I have very meaningful input here. There is already guidance and information and material on the site of the on the website of the University of Hawaii. So of course this material could be steadily transferred, reused by the authority. It is just a website, so I don't think it is enough, because not everybody, will check a website before going to a summit. So I think there is much more to do than just posting information on the website. And how, I don't know, it really is a community matter to make sure that there is a good flow of information and that the people who want to go understand that there is some some etiquette to follow and to go on the Pono Way. And for tourists, it is yet another matter. How do you reach out to, how do you ensure that the tourists are properly informed?
I mean, just so my brain works. Look, when I see the authority provide guidance, first I gotta figure out, does the authority even have the ability to provide guidance? I'm not sure, because I know some of those people on the authority, and I know them, and I know they don't know. You see, so those are the kind of things that pop up in my brain when I look at it. So, yeah, but my point is, I want to make sure that the authority themselves understand the information, because that's why we got presented. I don't want to say half-assed, but we're missing a lot of stuff here, and I'm just kind of shocked and surprised. In fact, the main things that were, I mean, the main issues are not even being addressed at all. And so, I mean, what are we going to give guidance on this stuff? If that's the case, we're going to end up in the same area. So.
When I see this about providing guidance, I think a little bit about some of the struggles for folks from East Maui, who are also struggling with issues of access, issues of people who sort of have no business being in their space, or who don't even know they have no business being in their space. So practically speaking, I wonder if there's you can't really get around without a car. If you're visiting Hawaii, you can't really get around without the car. So perhaps there's some way for visitors to have to read an initial, some sort of land acknowledgement, or be told that they don't have, this car does not give you license to go to every place, or something at the point of accessing the thing that lets them get there, which is the car, and maybe working somehow in that process.
Just throwing one out there. Yeah, same kind of struggling with the question, but I think for the authority, which is part of the struggle, is how do we, I think, empower community, and we can talk about what community. That's a bigger discussion, but how do we empower the community to guide, and I think beyond even guidance, hold accountable all of the things that are related to appropriate and pono behavior on Mauna Kea. So.
How would you answer that then, right? Because it's a reshape of the question, but how would you answer that? How would we? What is mana'o your about empowering community? How?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's identifying who the community is, and right. Well, right. Yeah. Identify community, and I know that working in this governmental institution, I very clearly identify that this government struggles to empower communities. So, a lot of these authorities or agencies, whatever they may be, they don't have the blueprint for that at the moment. So, and I don't think it's something that has to be innovated. I think it's very ancestral. We have the answers or sort of practices to that, but yeah.
What are some of those things that you want to make sure, hey guys, and stuff, like this is Ikekupuna, do this, and this.
Well, I'll share one quick example, and I want to pass the mic. But I was just shared a story today from a kumu. Was sharing about his experience accessing spaces in Aotearoa, and how he used an example of there is a log that was a clear boundary of where to access, not to access. And as soon as he stepped over that log, there's a 10-year-old keiki that was there to tell him, Kumu, you got to get on the other side of that log. And I think that's the level of accountability that we need to empower the community to be able to, again, inform and hold individuals, groups, whoever accountable related to the appropriate and pono way to conduct themselves on Mauna Kea.
Wow. A smart ass in me wants to say so many inappropriate things right now. but I'm gonna try to keep it professional here. I'm gonna try to keep it professional. The the first thing I'll say is the appropriate and pono behavior. I think it's a really big question, but the activity, the individuals, the entities that are up there the most probably need to lead the way with that. And I will say that one thing that I think we heard loud and clear from Kalekoa, and I appreciate him bringing this up, but to move forward, first we have to address the hurts, the heva of the past. There have been many, I know a fraction of what I'm sure is in Kalekoa's understanding, but there were many, many promises made and broken, and a community that has been ignored and demoralized and run over, frankly, for generations. I think that can also be pretty well proven in the public record. And so although I love this idea of community being empowered to have a voice and be listened to, will they be listened to? I'm kind of like Kalekoa. I came to this tonight to kind of like get a feel for what's really going on here. I have so much respect for you guys that have stepped onto this board and these kind of committees, because it's not an easy place to be. It is a hot seat. It is a lightning rod in so many ways. But I hope, sincerely hope, that we are moving beyond the ways business has been done as status quo here in Hawaii. Yeah? Because from the beginning, the community said no to TMT. And it took people chaining themselves and a standoff that lasted months before that community was finally listened to. And that's inappropriate. That's so rude that people had to abandon everything, their livelihoods, their work, their children, their families, everything else going on. Because the people that were supposed to be stewarding and looking after were not. They were looking after other people's interests. And that's the kind of nonsense that has to really stop. And I really want to believe that this is going to do better. I really, really do. I want it so bad. But you'll know a tree by its fruit. And we'll have to watch for fruit. I think the first thing that we cannot ignore is dealing with the history. And the people that are up there now, they're the ones that got to deal with it. They might not be the ones that broke the promises, but they're the ones inheriting the mess. Got to figure out how to do what they can to make it right. And there needs to be a respectful, not just, okay, I heard what you said. Okay, I'm acknowledging you guys don't want any more telescopes, but we're going to do it anyway. Just tell us how to do it so you guys will be happy. Just tell us how to do it so you guys won't block us again. We don't have time for that. We're wasting time if that's all that's going on, you know? But like, how can we really move forward in ways that truly are pono? We have to not kid ourselves about what's happened. We have to not kid ourselves about what's really going on. And we have to really get real about it. Because I think there are people in the Hawaiian community that are not actually opposed to astronomy keeping up with the times and like being a world-renowned thing, but there has to be limits. I can't speak in the terms of all these kind of things, but I can speak in the terms of like what common ground can we find? What can be allowed? There are some things that I think we can deal with what we have all inherited right now. But we gotta be honest and open about how to make that as right as we can and about what we're really doing here. Thanks. That was as not smart ass as I could make it.
All good, all good. Yeah.
Can you go back to the question? I think I figured out what was wrong with it for me. So the question presumes that everybody should go, and it's up to the authority or community, if we saw community, to ensure that all these people who go conduct themselves properly. I think what bugs me about that, though, is the presumption that everybody who let go can go, right? Because that kind of place, that kind of space, you gotta have one good purpose for go, right? What is your purpose of going? If you just gonna go because you let go.
And what are those purposes you think?
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? That's the hard part. purpose and who gets to define that. I think that's the hard part. Yeah.
What your purpose is, that's your answer. Okay, I guess it's frivolous. I guess whatever I'm thinking is just shits and giggles.
But just kind of shifting them that way, right, might be one way to look at them.
Mahalo. Any other thoughts with this particular question? I know you guys are all waiting for that last question.
You know, when the main user of the space, they set a tone, and you know, when an industry or a business or a authority or a whatever has a history of just more or less doing whatever they like, it rubs off, and then you see the unintended consequences of that kind of behavior continuing, you know? And if there's this continued strife and unresolved stuff, it also trickles down and it continues to be inherited generation after generation. So.
And I know we immediately were thinking at the Kanaka level, at the people level. But when I'm referring to community, I'm referring to Akua, to our Kai, to our Aina, to our Vai, to our Iwi, our Oiwi, and of course the greater, community. So, holding space for them, and how do we empower them to decide what is pono to be done on top Mauna Kea?
Okay, we're going to go to our next question. Okay, so after learning about Kanawai and examples of how they guide stewardship and ecosystem management, what are some examples of places or times on Mauna Kea or elsewhere where Kanawai are at work? Now, I could tell already some of you guys are reworking that question so that it makes sense within kind of your frameworks. Yeah, and that's my cut you too. You can express it what you think is trying to get at this point, right? Which is basically, how do we use the Kanawai? Yeah, what does that here? Anybody like jump up? Oh, yeah.
I have a question for you. Do we use them or do we operate within them?
Yeah. Hey, what's your monologue?
For all these years, and so it's like you put restrictions on us and how we do and what we can do, and yet I'm looking at I can look at Haleakala right now. I can start there if I wanted to. I can go Mauna Kea and I can look at all those that history. I mean, I just start with title itself again. I mean, we can start. That's Kanawai. That's ignored. You see, my point is that when I look at these this is kind of hypocrisy that I see. So it's like we're going to pretend that all of that stuff is not even on the table, but now we're going to talk about how the community run around on the mountain, and that's the important stuff. When the main pebble that created all that story, this whole history, is state and the astronomy industry. And so, I'm looking how come we don't have a discussion about that first? Why we never even talk about what the astronomy has done. I mean, the fact we're going back to we actually physically, Kanawai, we have to physically put ourselves on the line. Kanawai. So I guess I'm trying to say is that this Kanawai stuff is that how come, I guess it needs to be more holistic. It needs to look at also, the way I'm looking at this is just basically talking about stewardship, okay, but we should start by looking clearly at the history, all the past effects, and how those Kanawai has never been followed, have been broken in the past. And again, I'm going to just start off with the access road. I mean, we can just start off with that.
So these Kanawai that we're talking about, the one that Antifor is talking about, is...
That's part of the Kanawai. But that has never been applied to the astronomers. The Kanawai Kaiokea, let's go put that on the, I know what Kaiokea means. And look at, that thing doesn't belong up in the Mauna. You like put Kanawai Kaiokea, let's put it down. They wouldn't be up there. I guess that's my point. We talk about it, but we're not talking about it. Because if that's the case, let's go put it on there first. Kanawai Kaiokea, let's get all the astronomy and all their buildings and all their poisons and all their stuff they're putting up in the mountain right now. That's Kanawai Kaiokea. They don't even put that stuff in Kahului. That stuff they get on the mountain, they can't even put them in Kahului. How come? That's Kanawai Kaiokea. Let's talk about it.
I don't have answers, but I have more. Is astronomy compatible with Hawaii? Yeah. And if so, what does it mean? Because I'm in the astronomy business, and I really would love to hear from the community what does that mean. If again it is compatible, and if it is not, then so be it. Okay, but I think to me the challenge is, if we want to build bridges, is really for astronomy to understand that if we want to continue to operate, we have to follow other knowledge systems than our systems that has prevailed the way we have developed astronomy over time, as my neighbor was saying, and we need to change paradigm. Okay, if we want to continue, we need to operate following the Kanawai and other rules.
I wonder if the question could be even modified further to say, like, is astronomy as a pure science the same as the military-industrial complex of astronomy, the way it's currently being done? Is that the only way? Because I don't know that astronomy, I feel like astronomy and the seeking of Ike is certainly compatible, but maybe not the way it's done and the way lands are taken and the buildings are built. And
I mean, JG asking great questions, right? That's the right questions to be asking, I think. You know, and should astronomy have been asking those questions 50 years ago? Absolutely. And for me, I just, you know, I'm new to astronomy. I just came into this not even 1 year ago, because I was so that these kinds of conversations are happening now. So just, you know, this circle, I'm pretty stoked to be here, really. So I think when we talk about how the Kanawai apply, it's really about how we apply them going forward, right? So if it's taking stuff down, moving stuff, not doing stuff, we laying out those now so we can in the future. I don't know where I was going with that. Okay. Right. But you know, it's
reestablishing a baseline.
It's kind of about that. What I was saying earlier with the right. And kind of what I was saying earlier about if you can go with purpose, right? So if astronomy can understand its purpose and articulate that purpose to the community, we still got to identify, right? But if can, then right on, go articulate them. But if kind of get that kind of, well, no, of course we should. That's no good. But if can articulate, like, hey, this is the Noi, this is what we like to do, this is why, this is the hope, then that's a whole different conversation.
Maybe, Tita, if you don't mind going back to the question real quick. Yeah, I think just building on everyone's mana'o, you know, being shared, especially about purpose and, you how astronomy practices or fits or perpetuates Kanawai. I think the challenge, even just for me in the question is, and this is probably a bigger discussion, but having things in, like having even just a conversation in English makes it more difficult to communicate the worldview of OEV. And I'm not fluent in Olelo Vai, but I understand the difference. If we were having this conversation in Olelo, it's a different worldview that we're looking at. So I think, so when I'm looking at stewardship, for example, the terminology that I would prefer to use in English would be servantship. And so how does astronomy, our natural resources, which are really our kupuna, and so that's a term like stewardship that I always struggle with because, from an English perspective, and, I've had pushback against servantship, because servant means to some that we're indentured to, but to a certain extent, we are indentured to our Kai, to our Vai, to our Aina, to our Mauna. Yeah, I'll just pause there.
Yeah, I'm really trying to wrap my head around the question in context with these Kanawai, because they're laws of nature. They're not put to work as much as they're operated within, and I think need to be operated within with a respect for. And I come from a background of ecology and agriculture and all of that realm, and to me, as I'm reading these and I'm thinking about land use at the summit and on the Mauna, a lot of the things that threaten our cycles of a balance and regulation of the environment and regeneration and resilience of land and all these kinds of things are a consequence of land use, disturbances, introductions, things that were unleashed, diseases, animals, insects, plants, people, different kinds of people, different kinds of behavior, culture that have affected these laws of nature that are affecting the future of our island. We see that across 90% of our islands that are all non-native and modified today. We want to talk about finding balance today, but our islands are still so far out of balance because so many things have been introduced here without the things that in nature would keep them in check. If we really treated Aina as Ali'i and we truly acted as Kawa, there'd be a lot of reckoning right now, and over the last several generations. I aspire to hope that we can move in that direction, but it has to start with a profound respect for these actual laws and an understanding of them that has to guide any and all land uses and has to have a plan for what happens when the thing that we didn't think about shows up, right? That Mauna is a very special place. There are things that exist there that don't have anywhere else to go, like Hawaiians, yeah? And that cannot be overstated and can't be overlooked anymore. That's the reason, that's really why a lot of us are so angry, because it just keeps happening. It's been happening. We live with the consequences of it, and it just keeps happening. Like we never learned the lesson yet.
Mahalo. Let me get to the question. I think we answered all throughout this time, but I know there's more. 2 foot. Yeah. Yeah. So, aspirational statement. Yeah. Yeah. All the peppers is fitting into this one too. What are some of the social justice issues that are still unresolved and underpin the conservation, preservation, and public use of Mauna Kea? So I don't know, I'm mahalo kaleko for this title, the historical context beyond text begins. This is like the Captain Cook thing, yeah, that begins at state management. So previous to that, which you stated, title, yeah. Anybody else?
I just go back to the question of how and why is that the best use of our Aina to have the astronomy guys up there? I mean, we didn't even deal with that question yet. They just assume that they're supposed to be up there. And so how were they empowered? I mean, all of that stuff to me is all part of the what needs to be resolved first, because I think that's part of the, I don't say misinformation, but I would probably say lack of education and information that's out there, even from Hawaiians also. But, you know, especially from state government, the governor's office, I mean, all those guys I've had many conversations with. And so when I look at, you know, I mean, social justice kind of stuff, you know, for me it's, I mean, it's beyond, you know, just kind of social justice within this one framework of this particular society. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the best way, just kind of simply just saying that I think, I mean, to me, when I look at what's presented, it's like the astronomy stuff is not even looked at. It's not even on the table to be discussed. I mean, am I wrong or am I right? I mean, so, I mean, we're going right back into that battle again. I mean, that's, so I mean, unfortunately, it's like the nice package, but nobody still like looked, you know, they made a nice package, but nobody still wants to deal with those kinds of issues. And so the first question should be again, what is the best use of Mauna Kea? Is what astronomy doing up there the best use? Secondly, how did it even start to get up there? I think that story has to be understood. Who were the players? What university people? Who was the governor? Who signed the governor's, what do you call, executive order, and that kind of stuff. What did it say? And all those kinds of things. Because it was very clear. I mean, why executive order? You gotta understand a little bit title. Executive order does it. Executive order was given by the Navy. Did the Navy ever own Kaho'olawe? Of course not. They took control of it. So my point is, when you see executive orders, it's a sign that they don't even own that stuff up there. And this is part of that story that has to be told also. And I think that's foundational in all of this, because it goes back to to me, there's this, the only way this works is to hide the true historical facts and evidence that will demonstrate that really the astronomy really have no legal authority to be up there. And I'm going to say that very clearly. And I'll put that very clear. Kanawai again.
You guys have said a lot to this topic kind of already. It's good I get my timekeeper. No.
It's the same thing.
No, we got. So I'm glad that you're saying it, right? And you're saying it. It's not a bad thing for us to hear. Not bad at all. It's part of this process. Say it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. They were starting to wrap up now. Has an hour gone by already? Jesus. Yeah. We have a little bit more time for this, but we're going to pick, or you guys amongst yourself can pick who wants to give just the kind of summary of the stuff. You can tell. Thank you, Kupuna Kalekoa, for designating you. Yeah. Okay. I know. Then we've come to the Church of Kalekoa. Yeah. No, but mahalo again. This was not meant for like us to be like, oh, don't say that. Yeah. No, say them, and we go put them, and then, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. 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 Promises. Yeah.
I'm trying to say is that this is nothing new, and it's the same crap we went through again. I mean, it's like same meetings. I've talked about this before. So anyway, I apologize. I just kind of like, you know, I was just hoping that at least for once we would actually look at actual facts and issues that are constantly being hidden again. Like I said, issues over title, history, the access road. They're talking about, they still haven't figured out the title of the access road. I know that. I mean, I don't know if anyone else knows that. I was in the lawsuit too, but I had to, yeah, but I had to, there's no other political reason I had to drop out.
Okay. We're not going to mention that.
Four reasons.
Yeah.
Pull out of there, yeah.
Wait, Auntie Pua and Skippy. Okay. What about...
And I know what's going on with that case too. So my point is, these are the kinds of issues that still have yet to be resolved. So instead people talking about going down the road and we still haven't figured out how you can get
Who owned the road? Yeah.
It feels like we're in this like toxic rerun over and over and over for some of us many times in one generation, and I for one hope our kids don't have to continue this replay. But again, if we can get back to the core things, the core heva, the core things that cause so much distrust, that cause so much strife, the disregard, ignoring, just doing whatever they like anyway. Yeah, honestly, like the community is really sick of it. All these meetings and processes, come give input only, but we're going to do what we're going to do, but we just got to check the box and says we talked to you guys about it. Yeah, you said what you said, but we never have to.
Okay, community, we're going to start making our way back to make our way back, and we're going to get set up for a Q&A. Please grab some ono food to go home as well. Share with the rest of your household. Grab lunch for tomorrow. Grab your keikis lunch for tomorrow. We do not want any of this ono-licious food to go to waste, please. Made again by the Lahaina Civic Club. Mahalo to them. Can we show our aloha to these folks who made our mea'ai? Mahalo. Okay, mahalo, community members. And mahalo community members, we're going to also collect your mana'o cards. Thank you. Yep, this is your opportunity for Q&A with the authority members. So come, join us inside. Mahalo. Okay, we're gonna get going. So we're just gonna do a brief share out. Thank you, community members, for making your way back. To a minute per. Give thoughts. What aspect of the conversation was productive? What aspect of the conversation was challenging? High level takeaways or insights in terms of how this process can be improved. So we're going to start off with Keone Kuoha's group.
Hi, my name is. Oh, okay.
Aloha nui kako, aloha e ko Maui. Thank you for your graciousness and your patience. And I kindly ask that we turn our attention to some of our community presenters. Auntie Hoku said.
Okay, what? 1 minute overview? 1 minute? Okay. You know, in our discussions about recreation, we talked about a wide range of different activities, and I think what we found out was how you appropriately manage like access to Mauna Kea, access to resources. Who does that? Where those resources come from? That can be really challenging, obviously. Then the social obviously very torn on come from what but it was recreation, and then it had to do with aspirational. Oh, and the use of the kanawai. Also the use of the kanawai, trying to understand too, like maybe what Mauna Kea needed as well, and how do we as humans interpret that? Like what the Mauna needs, trying to incorporate rest, trying to incorporate appropriate access as well, and maybe access with the right intention too. So I think that was a good high-level overview. Awesome, thank you.
Appreciate it. Mahalo nui. Okay, from Puel's group,
I'm gonna give it a try. For our group, I think was things that stood out in our group was equality and education, providing educational material, also going through training, just like the hunter safety training program for the recreational side, creating something that's there's no sense in reinventing the wheel, but providing some kind of training, not only to help them, but to help the resources that if somebody gets in trouble, has to go get them. They have the proper education, they went through the training. And then I think the last one that really stood out is on a broader perspective, Mauna Kea is not just for the people of the Big Island. It's for all islands, but above and beyond, it's for all of Polynesia. And the importance of what that is and what we need to do to create things like the Ka'apai analysis to help protect Mauna Kea and all of our resources that are the most beautiful places in the world, that we live here. And so I think this is really, really good, a really good opportunity for us to provide information or provide things that can help better inform our state officials, our people that are putting this together, but everybody has a voice and be able to state what we think is important and how it can help protect the place that we love and we call home, Hawaii. So yeah, thank you.
Mahalo ko Archie, and I know you as one of the captains of Hokulea, and you brought pohaku from Mauna Kea and water from Waiau throughout all of your travels, so for the worldwide voyage, and so indeed Mauna Kea connects all of us. Mahalo nui. And from Mehana's group, we have Miss Aueloa. Aloha.
How do I always find myself in front of people? Thank you, Kaleko. Get you back. Don't worry. Goes around, comes around. I guess it's my turn. Our group talked, I think, more about the questions that weren't asked than the questions that were. So I'm just gonna recap there. And one thing that was very prevalent, and our group felt is very important, is in order for a new chapter to go forward, with this new office and authority. There really needs to be a truthful acknowledgement and reckoning with the past, the history, the history of how we got to where we are today, the record of broken promises, the record of lack of accountability, the record of disregard and disrespect for the culture and communities that have spoken up for the Mauna many times over the years, paid dearly for it. That has to happen. And in order to go forward and to have this be a new chapter truly, which I know I for one sincerely hope that that is where we're headed. We also asked why we're not talking about the elephant in the room, astronomy in general on the Mauna, and the history of astronomy, the astronomy, including a lot of types of recreational and behavioral issues that are common today. We talked about these kanawai that are being presented for this authority. They truly are laws of nature that we do not actually wield or make work, but we have to operate within. And any activity that happens really anywhere in Hawaii, but especially in some places as special and unique as our high places, our Mauna, they really need to recognize that these are laws that are holy laws. They are not laws that we actually have power and authority over, but they are the laws of Akua. They are the laws of nature, and they are subject to them, not them subject to us. I also think we ended up with the reflection that we really should start to act as if Aina is Ali'i and really pay it the respect and honor that it's due, and not just for lip service. One thing our group expressed is that we're not really sure what this is all about and whether this is truly going to be something different or if it's just a new updated wardrobe for the same old, same old. We hope not. But being brutally honest here, as gently as I can, with much respect and aloha for the people that have agreed to serve on this board and have agreed to serve in these staff positions. We know it's not easy. You are not our enemy. We're not out to hurt or attack anyone. But truly, truly, we owe it to our future generations to do better than the generations before us. We owe it to the future of our islands to do better by them if we're going to have a future that is still special and unique and still has the things about Hawaii that aren't found anywhere else. So yeah, that's my best attempt at a recap. Our talk was really deep. Thanks.
Wow, here the Pi'ilani, the Kaulahea Nui action. Wow. Okay, so now we're rolling into, I'm going to ask our authority members to please, and Executive Director John DeFries to please sit in front of our community members, our esteemed community members, and now we have about 10 minutes for a Q&A, and we're going to pull up the slide with the Q&A, and it has, yep. So this is an opportunity to ask questions, to provide comment, and maybe further input. What I do ask, there's about 20 people who are left here, and if we just share the mic, yeah? So if we don't take up 5 minutes of a 10-minute gathering, that would be Maika Iloa. So questions? Or comments?
Let me answer a question that you raised, right? The question was, how come we're not talking about astronomy? This is just, you have a journey. We start in this journey, to tell you the truth, we have what the law says, but we're trying to do things differently. As we move forward, we're going to talk about astronomy, but this is steps of where we're going. So it's like we're taking baby steps right now. At some point, we're going to bring up astronomy. But let me also that the law that was passed says that support of astronomy is the state's policy. That's what the law already says, Act 254. So we are bound, we don't determine what the state's policy is. I want to come to you about what does that mean? How do you manage astronomy? I don't like to use the word balance. How do we harmonize all these different things? But the law itself already says that. So in answer to something that you said, we are intending to talk about astronomy, but it's just we are at the very initial stages of trying to create this authority, trying to create a different process. I can guarantee you that you have never been in a state government meeting where the members of the authority sit here and answer any questions that you guys might have. That has never happened. It's never happened where in a state agency we have these small groups that talking and exchanging ideas that we can understand. But we kind of making this up as we go because we're trying to develop a new process that involves community, that respects different points of view, and that up before all of us. So that's kind of the overall kind of perspective of what we try to do. We're not trying to whitewash. They, as Neil said, that we're very transparent about we did whatever, right? Somebody had a question?
Just building off of that, wondering...
We have bills right now that clarify, more operational clarification about what we're doing. We need certain things so that we can move this thing forward, right? But we haven't gotten to the point where we're saying you should change the law. You should say, for example, I know your question didn't say it, but should we go back and say, oh, support of astronomy? Should it? Right, but we haven't gotten to the point yet where we've discussed those kind of, right now, standing up a new state agency, I never worked for the state before. There's all these rules that the state, how you get contract, how you get people to help you, it's crazy. For not signing a form in blue ink. Okay, that's how crazy it is, right? So at the time, we'll have that discussion whether at some point we make that. The other point, the other question that comes up a lot is that we only now have jurisdiction over the top of the mountain and what is called Halepohaku, the mid, right? The question that always comes up is that shouldn't we have jurisdiction the entire mountain? Because for the man-made boundaries, the TMKs and the rest of the mountain is managed by UH or DLNR or Hawaiian Homes, right? But that doesn't quite make sense because the Mauna is one system, yeah? So one of the questions we keep talking about, but we're not ready because we still get these baby steps, is at some point, does this authority for management of the entire Mauna?
Can I add to that to address your question, Keone? Let's be really clear. We are the creation of and still within a system that is fatally flawed and that failed us. We are given ample opportunity in our mandate to change, but we'll see if the system really wants to change. That's yet to be determined. But what you have here are volunteers, in this process to say, we got to try. This is, I've spent a lot of my life in the bellies of beasts, trying to nudge and nudge and nudge to kind of shift. And sometimes it comes from the outside, sometimes it has to come from the inside too. And I think we have here an opportunity to create something, some forces on the inside of this state system that really wants to be responsive to and honor what's on the outside. Now, it's troublesome because even in our name, and we had this discussion, you know, and I went through this years ago with Andrade and stuff, the stewardship, it's kinship. It's a different relationship when you think of it as. And so, but we're stuck with the name, and so we're going to try and do what we can in terms of how we define our work that really aligns more with our worldview than with than the name the state gave us. You know, so and likewise, you know, we'll see if we make a difference. But the conversation we had tonight gives us fuel. It gives us evidence. It gives us the sentiment of our community to try and really. We talk. Well, what does that look like in real life? And yeah, we have limited jurisdiction, but what if we have the proof point? We can move toward a proof point so that people say, yeah, it works there. Now let's try to make it work elsewhere, because it belongs elsewhere. This kind of values, and our kupuna understood that.
Okay, just had a quick question. It was kind of part of the conversation that we had in our breakout group. Is this authority positioned to answer the question as specifically who has title to the road? I know because we were talking about access, and I'm just going to presume as part of a state agency, it's within the capacity and ability to identify, you know, who will have that pala basically to, yeah.
I'll give it to the lawyer.
Right now, the only property interest we have in the road is we have an easement. We have the utilization. We are allowed to use the road. We don't, that's the question that I brought up, right? Road is owned by DLNR right now, right? So the question we have is whether we take over the entire, the Mauna. But we're not ready. That's the real answer.
Thank you for explaining how the bill and what's written into, appreciate it. I know I don't think you guys authored it, so not poking you, but it's kind of a case in point of how we got here in the first place, is when a certain body of government makes a definitive decision, ignoring or not engaging the folks at the community level that put it all out there to fight for these things and defend these things. And so that's what I hope that we can figure out. How do we move forward in a better direction and show a proof of point that this can be better. And so I hear you, and I think astronomy's here, and we acknowledge that, and I think there is ways that we can find solutions for dealing with what is, and then defining what we think is pono for the future. And so that's just what I wanted to clarify.
If Lanakila was here, because he said it many times, he would say that this authority was created by you. It was created by people that spoke up and said, it is the way we're doing things, we're not going to do them. We cannot do it that way. So we're going to have to come up with something different where we put people on that didn't have voice into voting positions on this authority. So if you look at the people on the board, there are at least 4 people that I know sat with you for 6 months on the Mauna. Now, unlike other state boards, you have people that have not only voice, but they have voting power, right? They have the ability to vote and to determine how things get moved in the future, which is very different from most state agencies. But it only came about because of what happened in 2019 and 2020. Without that, things would be still with UH.
Yeah, I have two questions. So I know you mentioned that this one of its guiding laws it follows. In fact, you mentioned where astronomy is mentioned specifically by state legislature support, right? That's I guess that's an act that probably came out of resolution. And that's guiding your work. But when you compare that to Hawaii state constitutional law that acknowledges a certain privilege and rights that protect Native Hawaiians, especially in regards to cultural rights, all cultural rights shall be protected, as it says in the language. I'm just curious, who supersedes what as your authority?
Then things don't have to supersede. That's
No, but
that's the point.
one does supersede the other. Correct? No, constitutional law doesn't supersede. I just want to be clear.
No, not if
it doesn't. Okay.
You got to show that is there a way to harmonize the two laws?
No, but my question was, which supersedes
That's
the
what
other?
I said. Your assumption that one supersedes the other may not be a correct assumption.
Okay, I'm thinking it. Second question. Okay, I wanted to put that on record. Okay. Second question, the issue of a title. I noticed there's nothing that talks about those kinds of, there's just an assumption again. There's an assumption of the history that somehow the authority, right, has inherited some kind of control, somebody has title to that mountain. Now, we do know historically, those were lands, specifically during the Hawaiian Kingdom, both government and crown lands. Yeah, in fact, the bottom portion became part of Hawaiian homelands later on, hence the access road. My question is, and we all know those who have the astronomy industry, most of them are actually second-hand or second-generation leases. Okay? So leaseholders, they're not owners. We know that. Okay? So the question is, one, well, who are the owners? So my question to you is, if the Hawaiian Kingdom no longer, or the heirs of the crown and government no longer have title to those lands, can you tell me when, what year, and by what mechanism that occurred in which our rights were extinguished? What year and what mechanism?
That's beyond my knowledge right now. I can
Okay,
tell you.
Thank you very much.
I
figured that out.
Listen to my answer, brother. If you ask me a question, you should listen to my answer, right? Under the law, currently, DLNR own. Wait. Listen. You're not listening to my answer, bro. Under the state law and the state constitution, DLNR currently owns that land. Right? DLNR as an entity of the state. What this authority does is that ownership is going to be transferred to the Mauna Kea Authority on July 1st, 2033. Now, your historical question, I told you I don't have the answer to that question, but I can tell you what the law says now.
But you don't know.
Yeah, I don't. I don't claim to know everything.
No, but I think what's really important to the authority is that you keep nailing that perspective every time. Right. Okay, because the authority is operating in certain constructs that you know very well. Okay, and so that perspective that you have been bringing for decades, right, you cannot stop. And I don't expect you to stop.
But I guess that's my point. Is nobody on the authority can explain how it was transferred. I don't need you on that person, so that you can explain it. I mean, somebody got to know the answer if you guys holding control, authority over somebody's land.
No, we're taking the land from the DLNR.
Okay, but my question was.
I know how the DLNR got the land. I get your question.
No, but the other thing I would say, Kaliko, is respect the fact that the authority is on a learning curve, right? To his point about the challenges of working a bureaucracy is only compounded by creating one, right? What will make this different, for instance, when the authority members adopted the Kanawai in the strategic framework, that was a big puka through in terms of adjusting the course, okay? Doesn't get us all the way home, but it's a step in the right direction. The thing that gives us hope, okay, because you're talking about Komeiji, myself, Hannes, we all kind of same generation, right? Part of what is uplifting of this whole process, seeing the young talent in the room, our job is to lay this foundation solid so that the succeeding generations can actually move this in a direction that they see fit, okay? So much of our work right now is like grunt work, groundwork, all of that. And so part of the educational perspective you can bring is important to the growth of this.
To me, I know that it's a question that we need to address. And there's a lot of issues that you could raise that the limitations of a really good authority, still, we don't have all the answers. You have more information than we do on this issue, and others on so many others. So I think we have to acknowledge that this is an issue, and to the extent, and I know if we go to the AG alone to get a determination, we're probably going to get some advice and counsel that probably is contrary to the position that you developed over the years. So we got to be right. So we got to say this is one of the unresolved social justice issues is that there's questions about this. But I want to go back to the astronomy issue and share what I've shared with you, and actually I've talked to Rich about this too. We seem to conflate the support of astronomy with the existence of observatories. And I'm not sure that really honors our traditions of, our ancestral traditions of being really good astronomers. We observed what was happening in the heavens, the celestial bodies. We developed, we analyzed, we theorized, we developed models, and so forth. That's the whole of the industry, as I understand it, and I'm certainly not an expert on that. But so you support that in ways that doesn't necessarily involve or entail a bunch of observatory infrastructure on Mauna Kea. You can support astronomy in other ways. Now, the industry may not be prepared to do that. With good conscience, I know I can go forward and adopt policy and say I'm supporting astronomy without necessarily saying it's okay to have infrastructure, in conservation districts. There's a different issue. So I think part of my advocacy will be let's divide that issue so that doesn't become an impediment on how we look at the Mauna, because we got to support astronomy. No, we can support astronomy. Absolutely. Archie does that on the canoe. So you didn't have an observatory. Okay, wow.
Mahalo. We have time for one more final comment or question. Would you say what? Okay.
Kalikoa and everybody else that sat on the Mauna and Haleakala and made sacrifices to get to this point, to create a platform where we can be heard, the truth can be heard, and come up with solid beliefs. And when I look at the board, the people that's up there, and I look at you guys, there comes a stage in our lives where we got to develop trust. And I'm saying this because I want us to get into a place where we can move forward. But that's the tip of the spear right there. Those are the issues and concerns that I think all Native Hawaiians have across the board. How do we get there? This might be part of the process to creating that path, right? And so if I cannot trust the people that I see behind there that's on this canoe, then me as somebody who's trying to load that canoe, gonna load this canoe with the wrong stuff, that this canoe gonna fail. Today was for you to gather all of the things that we need to put on this canoe so that you can set the course and get to that destination. And this is part of that process. But the tip of the spear that drives the sail is your question. And so I just wanted to say that, but we gotta start somewhere. This canoe has to go. We have to load the canoe with things.
I just wanted to comment that we are only here because of everybody that was there. The thousands of people that came, stayed, showed up, and wouldn't leave were the ones that spoke. And we are only here because of that. So I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate that it took that. That 2, 3 voices were not enough for people to hear. It needed thousands of voices for people to hear and for this to occur. So personally, I think that's too much. We shouldn't have had to have thousands of voices in order for that to happen. One should have been enough, and it wasn't. But thank you to the thousands that came and stood also, so that finally the one same voice was repeated hundreds of times. So it does take us all, and it does take every voice, and it does take every concern in order for movement to happen. So I thank everybody that showed up and added their voice to the thousands that came before. Mahalo.
Mahalo to the wisdom that illuminates the thinking here. Just a couple of announcements before I pass off the mic to John DeFries to close our time with all of you. If you have more mana'o, we have this survey link. So all the questions, if you didn't get your fill, and or maybe in the poll or in a week from now you have additional mana'o, please go ahead and add continue to add your mana'o. Share the link as well. It's on our website. Next slide, please. And then finally, we go to Molokai tomorrow. Woohoo! We go to Molokai Nui Ahina, and the Ohana community will be hosting us there. And then next week, on Tuesday, we go to Kauai. And then from there, we will have our 5 workshops on Moku Keawe. And again, please feed your neighbors. Thank you again to the Lahaina Civic Club. Mahalo nui for feeding all of us. Mahalo. And to Chancellor Hokoana for allowing us to gather tonight.
Just an opportunity to thank all of you for being here, not only for being here, but for engaging and staying. And there's absolutely nothing I can add to Hokulani's closing and calling our attention to the catalyst that created all of this opportunity. So thank you all again, and we look forward to being back in Maui someday soon. Thank you.